Welcome back once and all to another week, another fantastic Monday here at the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola, and we've got a big old rundown for you. I'm not gonna lie to you and say that all of the news is positive. I will lie to you about plenty of other things though. That said, there's some massive stories out there that we're gonna dive into, including more details being revealed about Clarence Thomas's billionaire benefactor. Oh boy, does he have some interesting hobbies. As well as updates on what exactly is going to happen with the Tennessee Three and their quest to, or two of the three, to return to elected government, which might be coming very, very soon, and a lot more besides. But along the way, you're going to have me and also Francesca Fiorentini, host of the Situation Room. Francesca, how's it going?
It's good. Happy Monday. What's going on? I don't usually say happy Monday because I think it's, what the funny person in the office says. But here we are. That's me. I've lost all of my ability to make laugh sounds.
You're now that person talking about having a case of the Mondays.
I'm a mom. Yes. Here we go. So, but there's a lot to get to. I'm excited. Hell yeah, another week in America. We're still here.
We are, and like we're making it sound as if the news isn't fun. No, this news is going to be fun. You know how fun it's going to be? Marjorie Greene is involved in a feud with another right winger, and I'm not sure which one is the reasonable or unreasonable one in this feud. She's kind of right, I think. So that's gonna be fun and interesting. Governor Greg Abbott is gonna be pardoning someone who killed a protester. And wait until you see what the guy had been saying in the run up to his murder. So we'll have that for you, and fake fury over boobs. So that'll be fun. And along the way, by the way, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that would be great so that people know we're live. Some of you might be saying, I'm not on the stream, I'm listening to the podcast. That is true. You are, but have you rated and reviewed the podcast? Don't throw stones. But anyway, if you want to send us any comments, tweets, or super chats, you have a very good chance of it being read on stream and a slightly lower chance of getting a $100 Blue Apron gift card. But I am telling you that there's a chance, so give it a try. With all that said, Francesca, are you ready to start off the news? Yes, the fun that we'd alluded to earlier will be coming, but not right now. We need to start with only the most serious sort of news. As many of you are probably already aware, we woke up this morning to news of a shooting at a bank in downtown Louisville that is already apparently, and this is up as always, these details are being updated literally as we're live right now, resulted in 4 people being killed and 8 others being wounded. It occurred in the 300 block of East Main Street. You can see on the map right there where that is located. We do not have a lot of details as of right now, aside from a preliminary idea of the human toll of this most recent, but predictable American sort of tragedy. The shooter is confirmed to be dead, and the circumstances of his death are unknown. Police said there's no active danger at this point. There's no belief that there was a second or a third person or anything like that. One other interesting note that was revealed just very recently was that in his address to speak about the tragedy, the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, noted that he lost 2 close friends in the shooting, saying, quote, "This is awful. I have a very close friend that didn't make it today, and I have another close friend that didn't either." He said he has another friend that was injured, quote, "that I hope is going to make it through." We don't have details about the injured beyond what we've already said, but pretty amazing to have one political figure know 3 of the dozen people most directly affected by this. Yeah. Francesca, what do you think?
Yeah, 3 of the 4, right? There are 4 people killed, and granted, I mean, Louisville's a big city, but the odds are like, that's incredible that he knows 3 of the 4 or 3 or 4 families who were affected by this. Once again, it's another week in America. It's terrible. We don't need to know the details. I don't need to know what kind of gun. I don't need to know whether this person was facing any kind of mental illness, right? Or was under distress. I don't need to know so many things about this. All I need to know is it's more gun violence. It is a gun that killed 4 people inside of a minute, I'm assuming. Yeah. That's all we need to know that this needs to stop. That's it. And it's just like we're waiting because, oh my God, well, what if they were Muslim? What if they were black? Oh, what if they were all kinds? What if they were trans, right? Like all the ways that the right waits to politicize this. Meanwhile, in a heartbeat, we can just say, hey, can we have more background checks in a state like Kentucky, which has some of the most lax gun laws in the nation, and also is like responsible for like farming out, like selling firearms to multiple other states that have a horrible problem with gun violence in their states. So yeah,
I get it. I get the feeling. I'm feeling it too. I kind of feel like we were still in the immediate aftermath of the shooting in Tennessee, and oh no, another one. Reminder, because I think this reminder is probably necessary, especially to people who live in the United States. This does not routinely happen in other societies. It just doesn't. Other societies that are big, that have cities, that have all of the things that have side doors, all the things that supposedly lead to these shootings, still manage to go, a few weeks at a time between mass shootings, but not America. Again, yeah, I don't know the details of the guns. I don't know the details of the guy. Sometimes that is relevant to me right now. You know what I hope? I hope that protesters rise up and flood into the state capital of Kentucky. That's what I hope. I hope somebody gets expelled from the state legislature because they're pushing for some state, any state, one state to do something about this. Yes. I'll remind you, by the way, as background, and I believe I haven't seen any details of the contrary, that I believe in this case, it's all adults who've been most directly impacted by this. But I saw this morning, and this is a fun stat in a country where half of the politicians never shut up about how they're trying to save the children. Gun deaths among US kids and teens are at record levels. They've gone up 50% in just the last couple years. I mean, they were always high. I think a case could be made that a society that tolerates over 1,000 kids being gunned down every single year is probably fundamentally a sick society. But then if you take that status quo and you go to record highs from there, I don't know, maybe there's something wrong. Maybe there's something going on that we should do something about.
While simultaneously they do not have political representation. And when, Congress people and when legislators try and stand up for them, as we saw in Tennessee, they are expelled. So the height of minority rule of an anti-democratic measure, and my opinion on this is like, okay, so if you want to do everything else, Republicans, other than any kind of gun reform, then let 16-year-olds vote. Hey, they're dying at a disproportionate rate. They're like, right? They're the increase in the number of deaths among teens is huge. So let them vote. Let 16-year-olds decide whether they want gun control or not. Oh no, you don't want to do that? A little too democratic? Yeah, no. Republicans love when young people don't vote. So remember, especially young folks who get politicized by this, they get angry about it. They're like, honestly, what do? We're throwing up our hands, we're pissed. Why vote? Nothing changes. That's exactly what Republicans want from, and Democrats, and anyone who's ever, sort of washed their hands of these issues. They want you to get frustrated and to not vote. I'm not saying voting will change or is the end all be all, but it's certainly what they're waiting for you to do is give up on the political system altogether.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it definitely, it objectively isn't enough, but it is an important component. Yeah, right there, in Kentucky right now, you have just a bunch of Republicans who are probably thinking, do I have to tweet about this? Do I have to pretend? Right. I don't, right? I mean, they're gonna look around at other states and think, well, I probably don't have to pretend, right? We'll see if enough young people rise up. We'll see if enough people, cause a ruckus. But yeah, for them, who's gonna be the person that says we're not gonna fix this problem this time? There's gonna be some amazing quotes by Republicans in the very near future, so ready yourself for that. By the way, someone in the chat was saying that they believe CNN is now reporting that 5 people had died. I'd seen it going back and forth all morning, so I honestly don't know. As always, do not take for a given that what you find out in the immediate aftermath of a shooting is true. In any event, it is a mass casualty event. It's a complete tragedy and happens constantly in America. Okay, with that said, we're gonna move ahead to news that we've actually sort of been hinting at throughout that first story. Whenever we're ready, why don't we jump into this video?
The most resounding message we're hearing from the White House and across the world and people across this nation is that this attack on democracy will not go on unchallenged, that the Tennessee House Republicans' attempt to crucify democracy has instead resurrected a movement led by young people to restore our democracy, to build a multiracial coalition. We are in the midst of a third Reconstruction here, beginning here in Nashville.
That was just a bit of a recent media appearance by Justin Jones, recent state representative, future state representative. If if there's any justice in this universe, both him and his colleague Justin Pearson, the two of the Tennessee three that were actually expelled from the Tennessee state legislature, say that they want to be reappointed to their seats and then eventually run to be reelected once again by their constituents to those seats. And I wanted to give people an update of that process because I know in the wake of what happened on Thursday last week, everyone is wondering what's gonna happen, when is it gonna happen, when are we gonna have these people who are so unjustly removed from their positions put back into them? Well, we're gonna start with Justin Jones. So a majority of members of the Nashville Metropolitan Council will apparently vote to reinstate Justin Jones to the legislature after he was expelled. They have 39 members on the council. They're gonna be having a special meeting today to discuss the placement. It seems like a lock. That's what it's been presented as for the last day or so. And so for Jones, it seems like we're gonna have a very quick resolution to this, at least for now. They will have to run again, but bear in mind they've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, which very few very young state legislators would have access to in terms of a war chest. For Justin Pearson's though, we have Mikkel Lowry, chairman of the Shelby County Commission, saying this weekend that the panel will consider at a meeting Wednesday whether to reappoint him. Lowry said he understands the need to respond to those who, quote, transgressed the rules of the State House of Representatives, but also added, however, I believe the expulsion of State Representative Justin Pearson was conducted in a hasty manner without consideration of other corrective action methods. I also believe that the ramifications for our great state are still yet to be seen. So that to me reads as a little bit of careful language that I would prefer to not have coming from one of the people who's gonna decide this. It doesn't sound like, it sounds like maybe it leads to him being reappointed, but maybe it's like, well, decorum and all that, and we'll have to see. It feels almost like a reading of the room, which shouldn't be your approach. But even if it was your approach, how have you not yet read it? How do you not yet understand how people respond? Because if they don't appoint him, well, then the Republicans are still the bad guy, but now you are too. And you can expect and you will deserve the protests that you will face. What do you think, Francesca?
I mean, I'm so glad that this story isn't just, now that's what happens in Tennessee and let's just, oh, well, then that's our state legislature, doopy-doo. No, the fact that this has made national news is for a number of reasons. Obviously, the heinous killings in Nashville, which we're now understanding that Covenant School had all of the measures in place that Republicans want in terms of training and firearms and all that stuff, and children were still murdered and 9 people were still murdered. So there's that. And then you have some of the youngest representatives in the state legislature standing up, going viral for lack of a better term, right? Galvanizing the youth, not just in their state, but around the country. And of course, they're African Americans. So all of these things together and the fact that they get expelled. So it's the traction, it's the linchpin, it's the moment that we need to really get something done, not just around gun control and to stop gun violence in states like Tennessee, but also in service of real democracy. You saw Justin Jones mention there, we're in the middle of a third Reconstruction. And that is, a hat tip to Reverend William Barber III, who led the Moral Mondays movement in North Carolina. It is a discussion of the fact that second Reconstruction was the civil rights movement. The first Reconstruction was when slavery was ended, right? And that none of those reconstructions to bring justice, real justice to all people in this nation, whether it's children who want to avoid being murdered, or whether it's Black people who want to not be over-policed, to have access to the ballot box, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that is work that is not done. And so it is so incredibly incredibly inspiring. The two young Black legislators are the ones who led this charge, who are taking also the lead from students and young people, and who are not backing down. So this could be one of those moments that we look back to and say, yeah, that kicked off a new wave of civil rights in our country around all kinds of issues.
Yeah, I would hope that it leads to others running for office. Obviously, look, Tennessee is hostile ground for, I mean, outside of a couple of the main cities, it's hostile ground, which, obviously that has an impact on the ability of these gentlemen to, rise to higher levels in state politics. But, and by the way, don't jump to conclusions. You need to learn more about the politics on a bunch of other issues. But the fact that, one rose to prominence while helping to lead civil rights protests and one rose to prominence while opposing a pipeline, these are good signs early on in the career of a state legislator. But I think a lot of people probably expect now that, yeah, we could be seeing the beginnings of great things in terms of a movement, but also in terms of the career of these individuals who've been willing to risk so much to make sure that their constituents are heard. Now, that said, I want to turn to one other aspect of this. One of the things potentially complicating Justin Pearson being reappointed to the state legislature in Tennessee is a threat that we are now hearing is apparently, at least behind the scenes, being levied against the people who'd have to do the reappointing. Apparently, Memphis could lose funding for some major projects if Pearson is reappointed. According to Shelby County Commissioner Erica Sugarman, leaders in Nashville threatened to withhold millions of dollars in state funding for projects in the Memphis area if commissioners were to reappoint Pearson. Quote, "We are also being threatened by the state to take away funding, needed funding to run our schools, to run our municipalities. And so, for example, FedEx Forum, the promised $350 million, they're talking about snatching that away. So again, this about bullying people into submission, and enough is enough. We've got to stand for something or fall for everything. And we've been bullied by the state for too long now." So look, I love the defiant tone to that response to it. It is telling, I think, that if these threats are happening, they're behind the scenes. This, like Saxton, the speaker of Tennessee, the Republican, he's been willing to say a bunch of stuff, at least up until Thursday. He's been very vocal about the need to punish these individuals. It would be weird if all of a sudden he didn't want to draw attention to the fact that him and his party, which already exercise effectively unchecked power, are willing to go to even more unprecedented lengths to, again, about somebody speaking through a bullhorn. Those were the stakes. Somebody was loud, someone interrupted our little talk for a bit. That you're now going to snatch away hundreds of millions of dollars of funding, that is how egregious you find these violations to be. They really do seem to want to look like the ultimate bad guys, draw the eye of the nation multiple weeks in a row. Okay, that's an interesting political strategy. Francesca, what do you think?
It's just a strategy of deflection, right? This is what happens in the wake of every mass shooting, which is how can we get mad at the messenger? How can we get mad at the reaction to this heinous thing that happened that was so preventable and so in front of our faces? And so this is a perfect opportunity. And yeah, they're young Black legislators. It's easy, let's take it out on them. And then we can kind of twist the narrative, and make it about, they defend BLM. No, yes, most likely, but they also are talking about what is a hugely and overwhelmingly popular reform in this country, which is basic background checks, which is the right to live, real pro-life policies when it comes to gun reform.
Yeah, we're gonna see. I'm glad that, again, I wish that the national media had gotten onto the story earlier. Might have been able to stop the expelling from actually happening. But throughout the weekend, they were very focused on this. There's been great platforms for both Jones and Pearson to use to spread their message. Hopefully that will continue on into the future. I will also say, as a bit of a prediction, so I think it's a little bit easier for some in the media to focus on this story as an example of overreach by the Republicans, authoritarian overreach, and even willing to talk about the issue because the issue is gun violence, which the media is largely they find acceptable to talk about. If my guess about the broader politics of these two individuals are correct, if and when they start talking about some of the other things they'd like to push for, I wonder if the mainstream media is gonna be as excited to have them on.
Right.
But we'll see, we'll see. Anyway, with that said, we're gonna take our first break. When we come back, Clarence Thomas has got a buddy and that buddy's got some issues. We need to talk about it, so don't go anywhere. Okay, we've got a big topic to jump into. We're gonna be talking about the Supreme Court. And you know what? We're gonna make it fun. So let's start. Ever since ProPublica's massive report of the apparent corruption and bribery of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas was released, some in elected government have been pushing for accountability, including the possibility of impeachment, including Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has continued throughout the weekend to push for this, and also pointed out some interesting details that have come up since that reporting. Take a look at this.
His own statement contradicts many of the facts on the ground and also raises in other ways even more serious questions. Later on in his statement, he stated that the reason and the rationale for this exemption was personal hospitality from an old friend. And he said himself in his statement, a friend of 25 years. Justice Thomas has been on the court for 30 years. And so to say what he is admitting in his statement in an attempt to defend himself is that he began this relationship with a billionaire and receiving these sorts of gifts after he was appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States.
That right there is fascinating. I had noticed that too. That's why he said the early years he had started talking to people and he's making these sort of vague allusions, but no, he has occasionally been specific. So if like it is maybe one thing if you grew up with Harlan Crow and you guys were like the Crow buds growing up or something like that. But no, you became dear family friends with him a half a decade after you reached a position of incredible power over American politics. Yes, that is mighty suspicious. And I would add to that what we discussed last week. Not only did he wait 5 years before becoming friends with his new billionaire benefactor, but he also said that he talked to someone inside of the Supreme Court to find out if he needed to do this reporting. And they were like, no, it's totally cool. Which, by the way, a group of 16 congressional Democrats are now asking Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts to look into the not only the trips and the gifts, but also what sort of advice he was given. But that also apparently happened more than a decade after he joined the court. So his time, like, even if his timeline was accurate to what he said, it would not absolve him of the obvious appearance of a massive, massive recurring conflict of interest to the tune of millions of dollars. But it doesn't even make sense. And so I'm very glad that AOC was pointing that out. Francesca, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's not the Crow Bros. It's
that is better.
The Jim Crow Bros. Thank you. I just find it very fitting that this man's last name is Crow, and Clarence Thomas has ironically been someone to uphold the racial inequities in this country, despite he himself being black. So, look. This story is insane and yet so fitting. We covered on the damage report when I was filling in like a couple months ago about how a Christian like head of basically like a lobbying group, you know, was like whistleblowing on himself about the stuff that he used to do and lobbying on behalf of, you know, causes like taking away the right to choose when you want to be a parent, you know, and other things, right? And he was like, this was wrong. Our relationship with one of the justices was Clarence Thomas, who he named, that was wrong. And here you have it again. Now, here's my thing. If you're a Supreme Court justice, one of 9, that effectively makes you the billionaire class of the judiciary, right? Like you are a very special privileged person. And yeah, who are you gonna probably make friends with? Other elitist a-holes who've got no accountability to anyone, right? You're not gonna just like not make friends, not do things, what, we can't go on vacation? No. I expect all of these people to do exactly that, to make friends with other billionaires, with other people in power. Here's the problem. There's just 9 of them. This is, if anything else, a huge bid to why we need to expand the Supreme Court, because no one person, one of 9, should have that much power over our nation's laws, period. And of course they're gonna be bought and sold, and we can talk about, you know, the future and the idea of impeachment later, but I just wanna put that out there, that this is rife. This is a position that is ripe and rife for and with corruption.
Yeah, they say I'm not gonna say who said it, I'll leave you to find that, but that with great power comes great responsibility. I think it was Edison. But anyway, so then in the case of a Supreme Court justice, you have more power than almost anyone, in some cases, arguably more than the president. So why doesn't that come with any more obligations, any more responsibility, any more ethical constraints? It comes with, because of nothing, it's all upside.
Yep.
Who the hell let that happen? Well, we know who let that happen. The billionaires and millionaires who control our politics are perfectly happy to have that as a final shield against popular sentiment turning against them. Maybe it's time to sort of rebalance the scales. In any event, I want to move on. We're not going to get to the next video, although AOC did have several good appearances. I want to jump to graphic 3 and my favorite part of this story. So since ProPublica's report looking into Harlan Crow, the billionaire bud and bro of Clarence Thomas, we've learned a lot more about him, including a fascinating article in the Washingtonian by Sylvie McNamara that profiles some of Harlan Crow's interesting eccentricities, I'll say. So one includes that he is a big collector, and not just of like mint Pokemon cards. No, he likes Hitler artifacts. He has 2 paintings of European cityscapes, a signed copy of Mein Kampf. It doesn't say signed by who, could be anyone, could be Wolf Blitzer, and assorted Nazi memorabilia, plus a garden full of statues of the 20th century's worst despots. So he says, this may seem suspicious or weird or like something a supervillain would do, but no. These are just mementos for how much I hate communism and fascism. Okay, and someone who visited his property said, I still can't get over the collection of Nazi memorabilia. It would have been helpful to have someone explain the significance of all the items. Without that context, you sort of just gasp when you walk into the room. One memorable aspect was the paintings. Something done by George W. Bush next to a Norman Rockwell, next to one by Hitler. They also said it was startling and strange to see the dictator sculptures in the background. Well, look, I think a picture is worth many thousands of words, so I wanna show some of the things. So first of all, the original Hitler painting you can see right here. Nobody's gonna get this reference, by the way. That's not actually by Hitler. I'm really gonna be impressed if anyone gets that. But we do have paintings of the actual memorabilia, including this. It's from something. I want to see if anyone gets it.
Okay.
We have a medallion with some Nazi symbols on it and all that. We've got fun Nazi linens. Interestingly, they're white. But I would also throw out, because obviously a lot of the journalism about this has been focused on the Nazi stuff. And I want to be clear, I get why. But also, he has a life-size replica of Hagrid's hut from Harry Potter. Is that cool? I don't even know.
I don't know
Bronze
who Hagrid
statues
was.
Of gnomes.
What did he do in the hut? I don't know who Hagrid is.
I mean, I don't think anyone knows or really wants to know what he did in that hut.
No.
But it was a hut and he did own it. That's just such a weird thing. Why does that exist? Anyway, so he does possess a lot of weird things. I'm curious what your thoughts are about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, this just checks out for a psycho billionaire, right? Who, again, yes, like the supervillain type level. And look, it's one thing to be like, I collect this Nazi memorabilia, and this I love. There's a little bit of a cover where you're like, so no one else has to see it. But you're putting it on display. It's not in like a basement, and it's not hidden. It's not like, remember it from American Beauty where like the dad had like some Nazi stuff, or his dad was a total Nazi. Like that was like hidden away and it was like his cool stuff. No, this is like out there, it's on display. And like also, okay, so that's one thing, Nazi, but the Garden of Despots, why? No, you have statues of people who you like, who you respect, who you're interested in. It's like, well, I collect this garden to remind me to stay humble. No, man, you have the garden. So when you take a little hate stroll in your brain, when you think about who you'd lock up and who you would gas first, you're like, oh, Khmer Rouge, oh, look, Stalin, oh, look, Mussolini, ooh, and there's my boy Adolf, like that's what you do.
Yeah, it's just like, understand, he has that collection now. He's, I don't know, 1,000 years old. So that collection must have, like, there have been jokes about people who collect Hitler stuff for decades and decades. Like, you know how people respond to Hitler collections, and you decided to do it anyway. And also, I'm not a billionaire. I get it. I've never lived like a billionaire. I wouldn't mind trying just as an experiment. But do people generally collect the stuff that they hate? I think Max Woods tweeted like, there's no greater testament to my hatred of music than my vintage vinyl collection. Yeah. Like I collect tons of board games because I despise them. That's not really how collections work. Generally,
I hate shoes and jackets. I hate them. That's why I have way too many.
Wait, just because of how much you hate it. Now, I did see one, I think, interesting interpretation of why you would collect it. That doesn't necessarily mean that you like adore it or whatever. Sam Adams says, this is what I've been trying to formulate for myself, which is that spending millions collecting artifacts from both Stalin and Lincoln commemorates power, not history, and makes that power fungible, something that, like a Supreme Court justice, Harlan Crow can own. Pointing out, and it was responding to other people pointing out, like, it just seems like to take all of these things and just display them like they're fun trophies, like strips away all of the humanity of what these people, what these events, what these times meant to people who are not cushy, comfortable billionaires, to the people who actually live those lives. Like it sanitizes and fetishizes stuff that, like, I get that maybe you'd have it in a museum or something, but just for you to like stroll through after a dinner, I don't know, that seems weird to a lot of people.
Yeah, and the signed copy, John. It's not a crime to own Mein Kampf. A signed copy?
Sure, yeah, it's not a crime, obviously.
Well, by himself. He signed it himself. No,
signed
who you think it's signed by?
Yeah. Anyway,
that's crazy.
I want to read just one more aspect of this. This is me being self-indulgent or whatever, but dear viewers, I hope that you will just humor me for a second. There has been a lot of talk about Clarence Thomas in the wake of the, I think, indisputable evidence that he's on the hook for his billionaire buddy Harlan Crow. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't have his defenders. Possibly the most breathless defense that I've seen comes, of course, from the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, which published an editorial. This is an official thing. They don't often do this at these magazines, called "The Smearing of Clarence Thomas. The left gins up another phony ethics assault to tarnish the Supreme Court." And I just want to read a little bit of this. The full thing is available, of course, but they say the left's assault on the Supreme Court is continuing, and the latest front is the news that Justice Clarence Thomas has a rich friend who has hosted the justice on his private plane, his yacht, and his vacation resort. That's it. That's the story. Yet this non-bombshell has triggered breathless claims that the court must be investigated and that Justice Thomas must resign or be impeached. Those demands give away the real political game here. And this is my favorite part. This is the whole reason I want to read this. The piece is loaded with words and phrases intended to convey that this is all somehow disreputable. Super yacht, luxury trips, exclusive California all-male retreat, sprawling ranch, private chefs, elegant accommodation, opulent lodge, lavishing the justice with gifts, and more. Adjectival, I guess, I've never seen that word used that way. Overkill is the method of bad polemicists who don't have much to report. First of all, yes, there are some adjectives there. Would you like to take issue with any of them specifically? Are any of them inaccurate? Because I feel like all of those things are true. You don't seem to really have a problem with the adjectives. You seem to have a problem with the fact that we know about it at all. They go on to say the most ProPublica can come up with is that, quote, Crow has deep connections in conservative politics. And I would like to respond by saying that is so not the most they came up with. Like specifically they came up with that the way that he has deep connections in conservative politics is that for decades, he has been involved in a multi-million-dollar national effort to reshape the judiciary, which seems kind of relevant when you're best buds with a Supreme Court justice. Weird that the Wall Street Journal editorial board would go so unreasonably vague with their description, almost as if they're defensive about what ProPublica actually found. What ProPublica found, by the way, is the sort of thing that, I don't know, a journalistic outlet like the Wall Street Journal maybe should have found, but notably did not. And look at how defensive they are of one of the biggest, most obvious cases of conflict of interest and what I would just, it's bribery. He's bribing him to do what he wants and bribing his wife, by the way. Let's not leave that out of the picture. Sorry, Wall Street Journal, if I use too many adjectives there. What do you think?
It's incredible. I love that this little tidbit, they're so fragile. Oh my God, rich people are so fragile. Just save yourself and save all the ink and just get a big old crayon and write, don't take tax break, please. Just write, help corporation need help too, please. Like that's all you gotta do, because that's what we're reading, buddy. Like we see you, editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. It's so obvious that you're afraid somehow that, by the way, I totally support the impeachment efforts. I don't think it's gonna happen. I'm glad that it's a discussion, but like they're already preemptively afraid that like, again, they'll have to forfeit any of their massive wealth and all of the people who read it, only to be comforted and told that, yes, your massive wealth, you earned it all yourself.
Yep. Yeah, we always have to bear in mind the actual stakes that are being fought for. For many people watching the show, the stakes in these issues are literal life and death. At the very least, the quality of your life, whether you get to retire with dignity, whether you get to own a home, whether you get to go to college, that sort of thing. For them, it's whether their yacht is 10 feet shorter.
Yeah.
Like it's irrelevant. They'll still have the yacht. They'll still have the mansions. They'll still have
super anymore.
It's not. Hey, that's an adjective, okay? Back off, lady. They'll still have the accommodation. Who knows if it's elegant? They'll have chefs. Are they private or are they public chefs? Did you take issue with private chefs? I don't get to use the chef, thus it's private. If you want it to be public, then make it available to our audience. I would love to have someone cook me some food. Anyway, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I don't have a lot of hope for impeachment or whatever, but it is important that people understand, again, how significant who gets on the Supreme Court is and how corrupt the entire process is. Okay, with that said, we're getting way over time. We're gonna take a little break. We come back, Greg Abbott deservedly being focused on nationally. We're gonna give you the details on why after this. By the way, I wanted to give a birthday shout out to April in the LA County Public Defender's Office. Happy birthday. Glad to have you watching the show. Okay, with that said, we do have to move to some more rough news. What we have, though, is a classic situation of the weekend birthing a true menace. We need to respond, and we will, with our Monday Menace.
Tonight, we extended an invitation to the sitting governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, to come on this show on Monday. And we wanted to ask if he was considering a pardon for Daniel Perry. But for some reason, Governor Greg Abbott's office told us he just can't make it and that we should talk to the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, instead. So that is Greg Abbott's position.
I want to be really clear, despite that video being of Tucker Carlson, he's not our Monday Menace. He could be, but he's not. No, it is actually Greg Abbott, because you know what Greg Abbott did after that? He did what Tucker Carlson wanted. And you can bring up this tweet of Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, says he is gonna be working to pardon this guy, Sergeant Daniel Perry, who killed a protester. And we're gonna give you all the details. And I wanna be very clear. They don't give a damn about any of the details that we're gonna describe to you. The only thing that they need to know is that he killed a protester in a BLM rally. That's what it was. And so nothing else matters at that point. He went to the rally bringing his gun. He shot and killed someone. He's the good guy. That is it. That is all the governor of one of the largest states in the country cares about. The guy, by the way, on Fox News with the biggest audience only cares about the fact that someone they code as a leftist got gunned down, thus no crime was committed. But don't just take my word, for it. I want to give you the details. So last Friday, Travis County jury found Daniel Perry, the guy that they're advocating for, guilty in the death of Garrett Foster, a 28-year-old. So police said that Perry, based at the time 70 miles north at Fort Hood, was driving in downtown Austin on the evening of July 25th in 2020 when he encountered demonstrators in the street and came to a stop. Foster was legally carrying a semi-automatic rifle, which every right-winger says is the best thing ever. You should be walking around with them constantly. There's nothing suspicious about it. When he approached the intersection where protesters had gathered, Police said it was fatally shot by Perry, who stayed in a vehicle and used a handgun. Perry claimed to police that Foster, an Air Force veteran, had pointed the weapon at him, inspiring him to shoot in self-defense. Foster was pronounced dead at the hospital. So his entire claim is based on self-defense because Foster pointed the gun at him. Although I keep being told by right-wingers that having a gun, pointing a gun, there's nothing suspicious or dangerous about that. That's what patriots do. Weird how when someone, even though he's a vet, is coded as a leftist, all of a sudden it becomes an immediate signing of his death warrant. So Perry said, I didn't know he was gonna aim it at me. I thought he was gonna kill me. I've never been so scared in my life. Bear in mind, it seems pretty clear that he drove specifically to find these protesters. So bear that in mind. But anyway, this claim that Foster raised the barrel of his AK-47 is Perry's principal hope, okay? It was refuted over and over during the first 3 days of the trial by witnesses who were near Foster that night. All repeated basically the same story. They heard squealing tires as a car sped into a group of about 20 protesters. The protesters, some of whom had almost been hit by the car, slapped and kicked it. Understandably, they were almost run down. Garrett Foster strode to the car's side and issued an order to the driver. All of the witnesses insisted that Foster did not raise the barrel of his gun. According to the DA's lead prosecutor, his gun was recovered with the safety still on and no bullet in the chamber. And that is not even to get into what we will get into, which is everything that Perry had been posting on social media in the lead up to it. All of the evidence shows that his claim of self-defense was absolute nonsense. He drove into a crowd of protesters, and when one got near him with a gun, he gunned him down through the window of his car. So we're gonna get to more of this, but Francesca, what do you think?
It's a Texas jury. It's a Texas jury, and they were presented with all of this evidence, as John laid out, all of the eyewitness testimony that says that he didn't point the gun at him, and they found this dude guilty. They found Perry guilty. He murdered him, and he also went looking for trouble. Yes, right there. And so that's when the justice system actually works well, right? And it has to be beyond a shadow of a doubt, and it doesn't always work out, and it usually doesn't work out in the favor of activists and protesters who are aggressed upon, right? So let's put that aside. Then you have Tucker Carlson, right? Primetime Klansman out there calling on a politician to overturn this ruling, to exonerate him, even though he was found guilty. I mean, my God, we live in a racist nation. My God, we are run by minority rule. It wasn't enough that this jury, again, I think it was a high bar. All of these things are a high bar to clear. And the jury found him guilty. And now then you have a primetime news anchor calling on a governor. And what does the governor say? Oh, absolutely, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it because I'm scoring political points against people who are protesting the massive amount of death of unarmed Black people at the hands of police. So I'm just like, it's absolutely enraging. Like, you wonder why we need a third Reconstruction. You wonder why we need a new civil rights movement. This right here, and you see that Tucker Carlson and villainous Greg Abbott, they're in the minority, but they have so much power and control. We are being run by straight up Klansmen, y'all. Like, these are the people who are in power.
Here's a crazy hypothetical. So he says that Foster raised his gun at him. Okay, that's a claim he made. Others refute it. You know who definitely raised his gun? Perry. So Perry raised his gun. If Foster had then shot him to death with his AK-47, does anyone think that Tucker Carlson would be like, oh no, stand your ground? This is Texas. This Texas is what patriots do. Does anyone think that Governor Abbott would be trying to vacate the sentence? Kind of doubt it.
No, and we laud them. I mean, the other thing I was gonna say is, like, Tucker Carlson interviewed Kyle Rittenhouse, guys.
Yeah, they like vigilantes. We're gonna get to more of that. I want to make sure that we get to the social media stuff though, because that's probably the most important part of this. Tucker Carlson, Greg Abbott are fully aware that the guy that they're now working to pardon, Daniel Perry, made very clear what he was intending to do when he drove in a group of protesters and shot one dead in 2020. During the trial, prosecutors pointed to Mr. Perry's social media posts, such as this one, saying that he might, quote, kill a few people on my way to work. They are rioting outside my apartment complex. On another occasion, just in case that wasn't clear enough, he says, I might go to Dallas to shoot looters. Perry also encouraged violence in a variety of different social media posts. If that's not specific enough about how this process went, here's a fun one. Prosecutors presented a Facebook Messenger chat between Perry and a friend, Michael Holcomb, which occurred 2 weeks before he shot and killed Foster. In it, Perry argued that shooting protesters was legal if it was in self-defense, the defense that he used to try to get out from the consequences of having gone and shot and killed a protester. By the way, when he was interviewed by police after the shooting, he initially freaked out when he found out that Foster had died. He apparently calmed down once he told he was going to be released. And he got so calm that he even joked, quote, "Do I get to keep the jumpsuit?" He had just murdered someone. And he thinks it's funny because he might have a memento from the experience. Now, for most people, it's difficult to imagine how you could possibly respond that way. But bear in mind, this guy, according to his social media activity, had been preparing for this moment for at least weeks, constantly fantasizing about driving to protest to murder someone and then claiming self-defense to get out from the consequences. All of this is not new, by the way. All of this is available for Tucker Carlson, for Greg Abbott. They don't care at all because, again, the show is about acknowledging and dealing with so that you can overcome harsh truths. They don't care about vigilante killers. They just don't. They love Kyle Rittenhouse. They love this guy. They want people to go to places and kill leftists.
Yes.
That's it. And when they do, they will defend them. They will fundraise for them. They will try to make them national figures. They will treat the murderers better than they will treat the millions of people making up the group that they're advocating for violence against. That's what's going on. It sucks, but that's what it is. I don't know how many examples we need of this. What do you think?
I mean, the right can shut up forever about, anyone coming for them, about the wokesters, about Democrats, about anybody. Like, this is political violence at its most disgusting and its most dangerous. And you're absolutely right. And look, 2020 was a while ago, right? We're a few years removed from the BLM movement. And what this does in this country that claims to care about democracy, when you can't silence people through ordinary avenues, what do? Oh, you sick thugs on them. You sick your radicalized base on them. So it's not bad enough that the police were aggressing upon people who were exercising their First Amendment rights all through that summer and continue to do so. No, that's not enough. We need to basically have, our deputized vigilantes who were again gonna make national figures, as you mentioned. We're gonna sick them on protesters. So I am very scared for what this means in the future, and know that ultimately it's because they don't feel that they have control, because they know they're in the minority, and so they're resorting to violence in order to continue that minority rule. The winds are in our favor, but it is so much scarier now to take the streets because of what happened in 2020.
Yeah, and it's not like it. Just like think about what it represents that Tucker Carlson obviously has as a strategy that he wants to train his audience to believe that all of this is justified. It's not like they need individual leftists dead to win an election or whatever, but they need their base to think that murderous violence is acceptable.
And they want to scare us, John. Do you know what I'm saying? Like even me just being like, they want to scare us. They want to scare people into submission. Don't exercise your First Amendment right. Yes.
They want people to be terrified of being murdered. That's what they want. And by the way, this is an outgrowth of, we were talking about Matt Gaetz having the former war criminal on his staff. Like they're always defending these guys who go over to Iraq or Afghanistan and murder civilians and all that. Because again, by the way, isn't it ironic that like the godless atheist is like, hey, maybe we shouldn't kill people all the time. And the people who have a divinely inspired roadmap to morality believe that lots of the time murder is actually great. And I think that you're being kind of mean and wanting there to be consequences for it. Isn't it weird how that shakes out? Anyway, we're gonna see the pardon process as it goes forward. We are regrettably out of time in our first hour. Thank you everyone on linear platforms and on the podcast. Those of you on other platforms, there's a lot more to come in the aftermath, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Iadarola. I'll see you soon.